Hi there, this is Ronnie coming at you with a video. I was watching the video from Jenny the RogueDM this morning about her EXPO weekend. I'll put a link to the video in the comments, in the description. It's a very good video. She obviously had a great time. Did a lot of different styles of games, which is great. One of the things I do like is when GMs mix it up. And this video isn't really a comment on that video. You know, she certainly had a good time. It's a good video to watch. But something that happened in one of her games that did kind of catch me, and I wanted to talk about it. It's something that Jenny and I have discussed over the weekend, and that was the situation that arose during her Hollow Earth game, where one of the players came in, was very didn't want to play a particular character because there was some sort of occult symbol thing on the character sheet, and then spent a good portion of the game trying to kill that character because that character got played by another player, and he eventually left. Now it sounds to me, certainly it sounds from Jenny, that he'd never played a role-playing game before, and it's certainly the case that either he had never played a role-playing game before, or his experience of role-playing games was very, very different from the kind of role-playing that was happening there. Now, that in of itself is not a bad thing. There are all kinds of different styles and ideologies and so on with role-playing games. But one of the things that it did sort of bring up for me, I have never been to EXPO. I admit that the sheer volume of people in such a close proximity scares the living crap out of me. I would like to go, but financially it's not as viable. But the big issue for me is just sheer numbers. But I don't know how the setup is when people are putting role-playing games on. I wonder if it would help, and maybe people already do this, in which case this is a moot point. I wonder if it would help if, when games come up, if the GM got a chance to write just a little blurb about the game, the scenario they're running, not giving away spoilers or anything, but really giving them a flavour of the hook, and maybe an idea of the setting and tone of the piece, because a game in itself doesn't necessarily indicate a particular tone. And what I mean by that is this: Call of Cthulhu, which is huge, you can play it as really nihilistic horror, and have done so. But you can also play it very much as a sort of pulp, Indiana Jones, The Mummy trilogy series, and do a sort of pulp action game. You can even sort of pull pretty much all the supernatural elements out of it and run it as a kind of 30 set thriller. I've done that with Cthulhu. I've just ran it as a, kind of Untouchables thing. So I wonder if that's not available, if that's something that might help, with giving players an idea of what the setting is, in terms, genre that you're going for and the tone of the genre, whether you're going for something very light or quite dark, whether you're going for something sort of horror based or swashbuckle, or just give an idea of flavour. I don't know if that system already exists when GMs are posting games up. If it does exist, then I really don't understand what happened with this player. Clearly this player had a very different idea of what a role-playing game was to the majority. Now, again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's clear that they had the game was beyond them. If it was his first ever game at a role-playing game, playing role-playing games, I think he really should have, if he didn't, he should have perhaps earlier in the day watched some games getting played and get a feel for them. Because that would have, maybe answered a few questions for him. I think Jenny handled it, the best way she could under the circumstances. Because it is one of those ones where you're under, from what I can gather, you're under a very tight time restriction, really, so you can't, fluff about too much. But the player clearly wasn't, I don't want to say wasn't getting it, because that might be the case, that might be insulting him, but he certainly wasn't comfortable with aspects of the game, which is why I wonder if giving the idea of the tone of the game, although on saying that, as a new player, if you are a new player, if you see that a game is being run and you want to play that game, I would say do some homework. Go and check some reviews of the game, not the scenario, but the game system, on places like rpg.net. Give yourself an idea of the flavour of the game, the genre, maybe an idea about the system that's used, so that you can come into the game with some semblance of confidence about the rule set and the tone and the genre. If it's possible, if you're able to speak to the GM at some point during that weekend and briefly ask them, a couple of questions, not while they're playing games, obviously, I'm talking about, in between, then that might be good as well. So I think, possibly being able to put up a little blurb might help players. I think new players, I personally think an EXPO, that sort of place is possibly not the best place to run a game, to play a game for your first time. I may be wrong about that, but then again, I've never been to an EXPO, so I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at maybe going to the Glasgow one on Saturday for a little while, just to see what it's like. But again, a lot of people. It's one of the reasons why I kind of, I'm not very good at going to Collectomania, although I've been to Collectomania on occasions. But I think there's room for improvement from the organisers to maybe give the GMs a chance to do a little blurb. And if they already do that, then, you know, the players, if you're going to play a game, read the blurb. Try and find out about the system. Give yourself, you know, some education about the system. Because then you'll know whether or not this is a system for you, whether this kind of genre that would interest you, whether it's something you would want to do, see, run, blah, blah, blah. And it would give a better gaming experience. Because the other thing that kind of annoys me as a GM is I'm sure there's a lot of people who would love to have played that game who didn't get a chance because this guy took up a seat, when clearly, you know, someone else who would have enjoyed the game more could have used that, you know, could have played there instead. So, you know, if you're going to do it for the first time, I would suggest watching a few games, get an idea of what a role-playing game is, do your homework about the system. If you get the chance to talk to the GM, by all means do so. It's a great idea. It would benefit you as a player, it benefits the GM enormously, and as a result it benefits the game. So yeah, I think, as I say, the GM, Jenny, I think she handled it the best way she could. And you know, I would have had to have done the same thing in that situation as well. And just, you know, told the guy, look, if you're not comfortable, leave. But really, to be honest, it's just going to sound kind of bad, but he really shouldn't have been there in the first place. He shouldn't, you know, if he didn't know what he was getting himself into, I don't think he should have. This was the place to do his first game. I may be wrong about that. So that's my opinion. As I say, I'll put Jenny's full video in. The thing I'm sort of talking about is just one small segment of what is an otherwise lovely piece about EXPO and how well the gaming's went. So those are my opinions, and I'll be back soon with another video.